Hello guys, how are we? I took some time off from social media. First I thought the world was going to end in nuclear war when I heard about Ukraine. I think everybody's stress levels went up a bit when that news broke. And it hasn't helped seeing idiots on social media actively calling for the nukes to be dropped. So yeah, I put some distance on this nonsense. Then someone close to me suffered a stroke. And obviously that sort of thing changes one's priorities. They're okay for the most part, and we are expecting a decent recovery, but, well, our lives are probably going to have an extra challenge or two from here on out, which is not limited to gas prices. The picture I'm showing you is in the Australian cents per litre, which amounts to $2 a litre. And if we exchange this for US currency, this is what it looks like per gallon. So, we can't sit around and keep on waiting for things to get better. It's time to get back to work. On that note, that's the lead up to the subject of today's episode. What is Stoicism? How it works and how it's applied to our relationships and perceptions of morality. Let's get into the episode. So, standard routine. We should identify what the subject is and how it exists. Stoicism, from common understanding, seems to be a human behavioral trait of strength, of a way of dealing with pain or adversity. It doesn't specifically exist in nature, but it is created in response to its harshness. Now, people have different ways of coping with stress and adversity, but that in itself is exactly that. It's cope, not stoicism. Coping mechanisms are an important method for dealing with pain or stress, literally a means of keeping it together instead of losing your composure, usually by the application of some distraction. Mine is typically video games. Stoicism, on the other hand, is similar in this respect of keeping it together, but Stoicism is specifically used to be able to avoid distraction and to continue on. To get things done despite the pressures in life that make it difficult to cope. Stoicism is not for comforting your pain or loss, but getting stuff done in spite of it. That's the unfortunate drawback of coping mechanisms. They comfort the pain, but you can get somewhat addicted to the distraction it gives and then become stuck in a loop of just coping instead of getting somewhere better. And that's what you want to do. You want to get to a better place in life rather than be stuck in whatever rut that you're in. Now, as enjoyable as it is to be getting that high score, or the most powerful gear in the game, or the greatest accolade, like taking down an arc-tempered Valkana, these distractions and coping mechanisms are best suited when there isn't much to be done, or the thing you're trying to distract from has no immediate solution and you need some patience. However, if you don't force yourself to break the cycle and do something important, like clean your room for example, then you will never develop the habit or even the motivation to do anything else. Cope is more often than not a method for denying the harshness of reality, and only by facing it, breaking that cycle, can you actually genuinely mitigate that harshness and come out better for it. Now, some of my savvy listeners who have been paying attention since the first episode might be drawing connections on this from my last episode on autonomy. Cope, very obviously, is based on feelings, and it requires we act on our autonomic will to make our bodies move when we need them to. or else it would be impossible to break this loop. Now, I know I look soft. I'm obviously a geek or a nerd who you wouldn't expect to know strength or toughness. However, I know these things well. I used to work in one of the toughest jobs you can ask for, commercial cookery. It's not just a demanding profession, but it can be a lonely one. For little pay, little appreciation, and long hours. It's especially tough when you're a baby-faced, socially awkward nerd, like myself, if you know what I mean. That softy over there looks like a nice target to rile up with some bullshit. This is why I get to talk about things like morality. I've learned from the bad people who taught me all about what not to do. And I've also made some mistakes myself. I would say work and responsibility is one of the many ways people learn a basic degree of Stoicism as a natural consequence of life experience. This philosophy was never invented by anyone. I know people might be pointing to Zeno or Marcus Aurelius, but in reality it's just part of being an accomplished adult. As an adult, you need to get things done. One trick I had for utilizing Stoicism at work was when the orders started coming through, like a dozen every 10 minutes, is that you've got to prioritize. You will feel like you're overwhelmed and can't do it. You might even feel like walking out and calling it quits. That's when you need to stop, shut up, and recognize those feelings are distracting you from what you need to get done. You're the guy who's got to get the work done. So the solution to this problem is to decide on what needs to be done first, get your ass moving, endure, and plow through those orders. Just accept the situation is tough. Okay, fine. So what? Let's just work the problem. Now, I know there are some people who might think, well, what about our feelings? You can't just ignore them. I'm human. I feel pain. It's not meaningless. Yes, I know. Trust me, being a Stoic is not about dismissing feelings or being emotionless. It's just putting those feelings to the side temporarily in order to deal with the problem causing the negative feelings. Or it's putting them to the side so that you can help someone else who is currently struggling with problems of their own. We'll talk more on that later. When you're in a position of responsibility, or just in a tough place that you need to get out of, wanting to work through your feelings and not getting something done until you feel better is just cope, which is actually going to land you into a worse situation than what you are currently putting up with. Because what's causing your pain or stress is the situation you're in. You have to recognize it's not going to get better until you make it better. You can deal with how you feel about it later when you're not in the shit. Excuse the flowery kitchen speak. Flowery. Why did I put that in there? You see, it's very much like the situation I'm in now. I can just play my video games to distract from the problems of the world, my personal failings and life challenges, but that will only comfort the stress. It won't resolve anything. It won't give me the ability to manage the situation any better, and the stress will be ever present. If, however, I get up and do something, if I tidy up the house, if I do some work in the yard, I am making my environment better. If I study for my career interests, I'll be preparing to improve my financial situation, and if I do these videos, I'm passing on my knowledge, which gives me a sense of fulfillment and also contributes to a growing fan base that will help me towards my entrepreneurial interests when I kickstart my writing career. That is my ultimate goal, as a little side tidbit of information on me. I'm not a well-known published author yet, but I would like to be, ideally in the works of philosophy and science fiction, because they're my two main interests outside of gaming. So, I'm not just going to sit around and wait for things in my life to get better. I'm going to put in the effort to make them better. Even if I feel down and out or overwhelmed, I recognize I have responsibilities. You see, this is closely related to autonomy. It's by your will that you choose how to react to your feelings, to your situation, and thereby decide when and how to get your body moving. This is also closely related to morality, as a personal problem you've suffered could have been caused by another person. Remember, we concluded morality is a social contract of cooperation in how we treat one another. Of course, we know some people don't cooperate with this contract and sometimes then go on to hurt someone else. So, what do you do now? Do you follow in their example and take your problems out on other people as well? Should you spread this pain onto another person, only for them to spread that pain onto the next person? Is that what we should do? Cause an unending cycle of pain from generation to generation? No, of course not. Ideally. But this is actually something we know humans have done. It's something happening right now, isn't it? It's unfortunate, but it's something I think we can fix. It's just going to take a long time and a lot of patience. This is what I call the problem of pain. It's like a disease that spreads from person to person, and it does so because some people allow their emotions to control them and vent their issues out onto others. If we want to stop the spread of pain, it stops with you. And this is where I can adequately boil Stoicism down to describe it in a single sentence. Stoicism is the practice of being in control of your emotions instead of letting them control you. And that's what we've been talking about. You might not choose what you feel or when you feel it, but you do choose how to react to it. It's my body, my choice, and is therefore my responsibility. I can keep going. I'll dish out the quotes all night if I have to. Speaking of responsibility, cue clip. What? I clipped that together for a little fun. Chris is not the only guy with a sense of humour. I, of course, have no ill will towards either Will Smith or Chris Rock. They're both great actors, and as far as I can tell, they are good men, despite wherever they may have slipped up. However, there is something important that's happened here. It's fairly obvious. Smith had an emotionally provocative moment and lost his composure. Instead of being in control of his feelings, he let them control him. It can happen. Humans aren't perfect. And I'm sure we could talk all day about the personal things he suffered that's contributed to the current events. However, this is an example of what I'm talking about when it comes to the spread of pain and how Stoicism is the roadblock that we use to stop the spread of this disease. Despite some of the issues we're putting up with today, things would be a whole lot worse if it weren't for those in the past who, through their strength of will, carried on in their duties and sacrificed their time, their luxuries, their bodies, so that we can live a better life than they did. But we can't just put our feet up and relax. The only reason why a good time exists is because somebody somewhere is still putting in the effort to maintain it. You might have heard of this saying before: hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. I think the pin in that loop is people, that is men and women, during good times get complacent. We forget or don't notice the effort and responsibility that goes into creating and maintaining the privileges we have today. Or we get spoilt and we take those privileges for granted and then start acting like what's been achieved so far isn't good enough. Of course we can improve ourselves, but that doesn't mean we should reject or condemn everything that came before. Now, have you noticed something? I haven't said one word about Stoicism being an expression of toughness or aggression. I originally said it's a behavioral trait of strength. Now, sure, some people might accurately interpret this as being tough, as in durability. But some people get it wrong and think strength is acting tough, of putting up a front of being strong. Now, that can be important in hostile or desperate situations. If somebody is trying to pick a fight with you, sure, you don't want to express weakness. Or you're in a stressful situation with a friend or a loved one, and showing strength can give them reassurance. However, Stoicism is not what you can display for others to see, it's what you can endure for the sake of your well-being and the well-being of others. And I want to clarify another thing. As much as I am aware Stoicism is often associated with men, I am 100% certain women can adopt it too. In fact, I encourage it, ladies, if you haven't already. There are two reasons why Stoicism is associated with masculinity, and I mean associated. It's not a specific gendered trait, in my opinion. There are just some inclinations, shall we say, that make one sex lean towards it a bit more than the other. The first reason is biological factors that go back a million years. Women are the people who give birth. It takes 9 months to construct a person and then many years to grow a self-sufficient human. While this is happening, someone fit and somewhat expendable needs to be going out, keeping the tribe or the family safe from predators and also hunting the food or building the shelters. We know who they are, the men. We started this when we were in caves and we've been socially enforcing it ever since we figured out language. So yes, women always did learn Stoicism. They would have had to. However, because it was men doing the fighting, the hunting, the building and being killed or losing limbs, their strength usually gains the spotlight. As it should when you think about it. Being female is considered kind of invaluable in the animal kingdom. So it's typical that the males are the ones who have to put in the effort to gain the respect. Usually. Secondly, I know there are a lot of women interested in philosophy, and there have been many great female philosophers. But the primary demographic that takes interest in actually putting their ideas out there for discussion is men. Even today, that remains the case. I'm in a number of philosophy groups, and from what I've seen, the interest to express an idea is felt greater among men. Now, don't give me this women feel or are excluded nonsense, and women receive harsh criticism or anything like that. I won't have it. Okay? I'm giving you all this lesson on Stoicism. This is not an episode where I'll tolerate excuses. Okay? Lots of my ideas have been ignored by my peers. And the ideas that get a lot of attention usually receive more criticism than praise. Even if I were to get 1,000 likes on a single post, the comments will be filled with critics. It comes with the territory. And once you learn to not take it too seriously, it's easy to deal with. Let me show you something. This meme here is how I think when I put my ideas out there. Do you get it? I won't allow myself to be stopped. I will stand strong in the face of that scrutiny. That's all you need to do. So yes, by all means, ladies, adopt the philosophy of Stoicism if you haven't already. I welcome it. And this is actually where it's important in relationships, to have at least a small reserve of Stoicism. Have you ever cared for a loved one? Or had a loved one care for you? At least comfort you in a time of distress. Remember, I said Stoicism is putting your feelings aside for the sake of solving a problem, or it's putting your feelings aside to help someone. This is where Stoicism is a fairly compassionate or empathetic philosophy to adopt. If you were suffering a problem and needed to express it, you would probably prefer it if someone listened, right? Maybe helped any way they can, even if that's just giving you the reassurance of their presence. It would be upsetting, however, if they ignored you or then got upset themselves and made an issue all about them, wouldn't it? That's where someone putting their feelings aside for the sake of another who is struggling is important. I mean, we all have the responsibility to manage ourselves. That's what we've been talking about, to be strong and composed. But of course, we can have moments of weakness or distress. I should know. Very recently, I had an experience that had me crying almost every day for nearly a fortnight. Now, in my case, I don't have much choice but to keep moving. But this is how Stoicism is utilized to care for others. It's also used to maintain diplomacy, especially during an argument or some kind of conflict. Sure, you might be feeling angry or frustrated with a situation. That's fine. You're allowed to be angry, but you need to keep your composure or else the argument is going to escalate. You may even need to recognize that your anger is making it worse and you need to stop arguing. Never mind what the other person is doing. You can't control them or their decisions, but you can control yourself. So you see, Stoicism is a necessary aspect of life and necessary for society to run smoothly. We rely on strong people to get things done. However, if the rest of us take that as an excuse to be weak, ungrateful, or complacent, we end up putting undue pressure on others who can't be expected to handle everything all the time. Now, I don't think the world is ending. Some things have gotten pretty bad, but I can imagine worse. Pretty sure worse has happened before and society always pulled through. It's that reserve of strength, the will to push on and get things done, is what's needed to fix or mitigate most of the issues we face or will face in the future. We're in the bad times create strong men phase. It's important we don't get complacent. Don't give up or rage quit. You're needed. All of you, watching and listening to me now, have some kind of strength or ability that the world needs, or that your family needs, or even just for yourself. Even if all that is some patience to endure the nonsense going on around so as to not make it worse. So, we'll get into a summary of what we've covered for this episode. Stoicism is a human-developed behavior of strength, used to specifically accomplish a goal or to mitigate or resolve a problem despite any pain, pressure, or adversity holding a person back. This behavior is also necessary for breaking the addictive loops of coping mechanisms and feel-good distractions, which, left unchecked, can worsen a situation and make one weaker instead of stronger. If left unchecked, can make success, personal improvement, and achievement more difficult to fulfill. Stoicism is not a repression of emotion so much as a practical method for dealing with the cause of a negative emotion or avoiding addiction to a distracting positive emotion. In short, Stoicism can be easily described as the ability to control your emotions instead of being controlled by them. It is tied into morality and autonomy because not only is it a choice as to how you react to a situation, but patience and endurance are themselves moral convictions of Stoicism that contribute to the development and maintenance of civilization and social cohesion as a whole. You know, the more I think about it, the more I realize Stoicism is truly associated with patience, being calm and in control of oneself, which is fairly necessary for one to practice tolerance of things from pain to waiting forever, to enduring a workload and the stress or pain that other people express or exert. Maybe I can say Stoicism and patience go hand in hand. By learning about one, you are also learning about the other. I'll let you simmer on that for a while. Hopefully I'll be able to give you guys more consistent uploads and social media posts from here on out. But please forgive me if I've been lagging a bit. As always, I hope you've had a good day, and I'll see you in the next episode. Auf Wiedersehen.